All right, so today we're going to really dig into this whole government shutdown thing.
Yeah,
Or I guess I should say near shutdown.
right near shutdown.
You sent over this CBS News report that's like really detailed, and I think it'll be good to kind of like
Yeah.
go through it and like figure out
Absolutely.
what exactly happened, who was involved, all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think we can cut through a lot of the noise and really get to the
exactly.
the core of what went on.
And why it matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
So-
significant.
Yeah, so right off the bat,
Yes.
they keep talking about a stopgap measure and
Right.
a continuing resolution. Like, what is that?
Yeah, so a continuing resolution,
Yeah.
it's often referred to as a CR.
Okay, CR.
And think of it as a temporary, like, budgetary extension cord
Okay.
when Congress hasn't passed its full-year spending bills by the deadline.
Right.
A CR is used to temporarily fund the government and prevent agencies from shutting down.
Gotcha.
So basically, it just maintains
Wow.
existing funding levels for a short period.
Okay, so in this case, it was like the thing that prevented.
Absolutely.
Jesus.
It was absolutely essential in avoiding a government shutdown.
Got it. Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah.
the House passed this thing earlier this week, right?
They did.
Yeah. Was that like...
But it wasn't a smooth process by any means.
Okay.
The report makes it clear that this was a Republican-led bill
Okay.
that faced significant pushback from Democrats.
Gotcha.
In
Yeah.
fact, only a single House Democrat actually voted in favor of it.
Wow. Okay, so this was like a party line thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what exactly was in the bill? Like,
Well, so the bill aimed to boost defense spending,
okay.
which is generally a Republican priority.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it called for cuts to non-defense programs.
Okay, so they wanted more money for defense
Yeah.
and less money for like everything else.
It's like,
Gotcha. Okay, so that's already like a point of contention. Like what specifically were Republicans happy about and what were Democrats mad about?
yeah, so Republicans were, touting the increased funding for programs like WIC,
Okay.
which is the Nutrition Assistance Program for women, infants, and children.
Okay.
They saw that as a win.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Democrats were very critical of the proposed cuts
Right.
to things like medical research,
Uh-huh.
housing programs, and they were particularly upset about a big cut to the D.C. local government.
How much was that cut?
Over $1 billion.
$1 billion. Wow.
Yeah, it's a significant amount.
Okay, so the House vote is all fractured.
Right.
What about the Senate?
So the Senate also had its own drama.
Okay.
The bill ultimately passed, but it was a close vote, 54-46.
Right.
And what's really interesting here is the voting breakdown.
Okay.
You had one Republican, Senator Rand Paul, voting against it,
Uh-huh.
and then you had two Democrats,
Okay.
Senators Jean Shaheen and Angus King,
Okay.
who's an independent but caucuses with the Democrats. They both voted in favor of the bill.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, it's not your typical party line vote.
No, not at all.
And it's worth noting that both Shaheen and King also voted to advance the measure in an earlier procedural vote.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Now, the report mentions this thing called a 60-vote threshold for cloture
Right.
in the Senate. Like,
Yes.
what is that?
So this is a key procedural hurdle in the Senate.
Okay.
Unlike the House, where a simple majority usually gets things done,
Mm-hmm.
the Senate often requires 60 votes to end debate on a bill
Okay.
and move to a final vote.
Gotcha.
This is called invoking cloture.
Cloture.
And it essentially gives the minority party a lot of power to block legislation.
Interesting.
So in this case, because it was a Republican-led bill,
Right.
they needed at least some Democrats
Good.
to agree to end the debate and allow a vote on the CR.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer, obviously a very important person in all of this.
Absolutely. He's
Ah.
the Senate minority leader.
Yeah, the report says that he was like initially against it, but then he was like, all right, I'll-
Let's do it.
Exactly. It was a really strategic but seemingly reluctant move on his part.
Okay.
He publicly criticized the Republican bill, calling it terrible,
Uh-huh.
deeply partisan,
Yeah.
and said it failed to address crucial national needs.
Right.
But his ultimate justification for supporting it
Yeah.
was that he saw a government shutdown under a potential Trump administration
Okay.
as an even bigger threat.
Gotcha. So he's basically saying, like,
Yeah.
this is bad, but the other thing is worse.
Exactly. He was essentially choosing what he perceived as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So it lists a bunch of other Senate Democrats
Yes.
who ended up voting for it, too.
Right alongside Schumer, you had Senators Catherine Cortez Masto, Dick
Mhm.
Durbin, John Fetterman, Kirsten Gillibrand,
Yeah.
Maggie Hassan, Gary Peters, and Brian Schatz,
Okay.
all voting to advance the measure,
And then.
along with Shaheen and King, who we already mentioned.
Yeah. So it's a diverse group ideologically,
Okay.
which suggests that despite their concerns about the bill itself,
Mm-hmm.
there's a shared sense of urgency to avoid a government shutdown.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Okay.
that decision obviously didn't make everyone happy.
No, it definitely did not.
The report talks about, like...
There was a lot of frustration,
Yeah.
particularly among Democrats.
Yeah.
And it seemed to stem from a few key concerns.
Okay, what were they?
Well, firstly, they were just fundamentally opposed to the spending cuts,
Right.
especially those targeting programs that Democrats typically champion.
Okay.
And secondly, there was this worry that by passing the CR,
Uh-huh.
they were essentially giving a green light to these lower spending levels
Okay.
and empowering the Trump administration to make even deeper cuts.
And they mentioned Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency or something.
Yeah, that's right. Some were referring to it as DOGE.
DOGE.
Okay, which
Mhm.
seems to be, a somewhat tongue-in-cheek term.
Yeah.
But it reflects a real concern about potential aggressive cost-cutting measures.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Yeah.
some Democrats were pushing for a shorter, like 30-day
That's right.
CRY.
So the idea behind that
Yeah.
was to put the pressure on Republicans
Okay.
to either negotiate quickly or be held accountable for a shutdown.
Gotcha.
But it was a long shot because it didn't have enough support in the House,
Right.
which was already adjourned.
Okay.
So it wasn't really a viable option at that point.
Okay, so AOC was like
Yeah, she was not happy.
super mad. She called it a slap in the face and betrayal.
Yeah, she was very vocal in her criticism.
Like, what was her main point?
Her argument was that voting for the CR essentially codifies the chaos
Mm-hmm.
and reckless cuts that they see the Republicans pushing for.
Okay.
And she framed it as, robbing the government to fund tax cuts for billionaires,
Right.
which obviously resonates with a lot of progressives.
Yeah. Okay, so what was Schumer's response to that?
Well, he seemed to be trying to shift the focus away from like the immediate actions of the Trump administration during a potential shutdown.
Okay.
And instead, he was trying to keep the attention on the broader Republican agenda.
Gotcha. So, like, their overall policy.
Exactly. He argued that those policies would ultimately hurt the middle class
Oh, okay.
and that message would resonate more with the public.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got, like,
Yeah,
these two very different approaches within the same party.
absolutely. And it really highlights the internal tensions within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and then Trump, like,
I know, right?
congratulated Schumer.
Yeah, he actually praised Schumer on Truth Social
For real?
for doing the right thing and having courage.
That's crazy. Okay,
Yeah, it
so
was a pretty surreal moment.
obviously a lot of Democrats
Yeah.
not thrilled about all this.
No. The report mentions high levels of frustration among Senate Democrats.
Yeah, and Patty Murray was like,
Yes. Senator Murray was also very critical.
yeah.
She called it a false choice.
Right.
And accused Republicans of basically abandoning any attempt at bipartisan negotiations.
Yeah, and what was up with her talking about her shorter-term funding measure?
So she had proposed a shorter-term CR earlier,
Okay,
but it hadn't gone anywhere.
right.
But after the main CR passed, she kind of put it back on the table,
Okay.
saying, maybe the House would reconsider if they were really serious about working together.
I see.
But that seemed like a long shot,
Yeah.
given how opposed they were to it initially.
Okay, so then the House Democrats also got involved.
Oh, yeah, they were not happy either.
Okay.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called it a reckless Republican spending bill.
Yeah.
And they basically echoed a lot of the concerns that the Senate Democrats had raised.
Okay, so it's like everyone's mad.
Pretty much, yeah. It was a messy situation all around.
Okay, so then there's this last part of the report where they talk about how the Senate...
Oh, yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah.
After passing the CR to avoid the shutdown,
Mm-hmm.
they also voted to, reverse the cuts. I know it sounds kind of contradictory,
Yeah.
but it was largely symbolic
Okay.
because that measure to reverse the cuts
Yeah.
still has to go through the House.
Right.
And given that they were the ones who initially pushed for those cuts,
Yeah.
it's highly unlikely they'll just reverse course.
Gotcha. So it's like a protest vote or something?
Exactly. It's more of a way for senators to express their disapproval, even though it might not have any real practical effect.
Okay, I see. So basically what happened was they avoided a shutdown,
Right.
but at the cost of, like,
Yeah,
deepening the divisions in both parties.
exactly. And it really exposed the challenges of governing in such a polarized environment.
And especially for the Democrats.
Yeah, they're clearly struggling with the implications of these spending cuts
Yeah.
and what it means for the direction of the Trump administration's agenda.
Okay, so the big question is like,
What?
what does this all mean going forward?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because this was just a temporary fix.
Exactly. Just kick the can down the road.
Right.
And the fundamental disagreements about spending priorities
Yeah.
haven't gone away.
So
Yeah, there's a real risk of more funding crises down the line.
so basically we should be paying close attention.
Absolutely. This whole episode has been a stark reminder of the fragility of our political system
Yeah,
and how these internal divisions can have really significant consequences.
exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for breaking all that down.
No problem anytime.
That was really helpful.
Glad to be of help.
And yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens next.
Absolutely. This story is far from over.
All right. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.